for a long time.
I feel
I
that way
believe.
too, but I would remember you
So,
because I've had a girl crush on you forever, and I would remember meeting
well,
you.
thank you.
It's true.
And we've been chit-chatting for 20 minutes and forgot that we have to go live.
And
So here
and
we are.
and I'm so happy to meet you. And you what I love about you the most, Cathy, is you're so not full of shit. You are just
Yeah, yeah.
you're so who you are. I was
I don't
watching a
have
clip of
time.
you with Johnny Carson today when you very first, right? And you had a tough interview that night because
It was not what I expected
how so?
because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, number one. I had no guidance. I was what? I
How
was
old were you? Because you were only 18 when you did Raging Bull. They found you at
I,
17, right?
I worked with them. I met them when I was 17. I worked with them from October, whatever year that was, 77, I guess. And then I worked with them like almost every day. I would go back after work and read with them and stuff, whatever. And I was full of shit back then. Um, that's for sure. Are you union? I didn't even know what a union was, Yeah, sure, sure. And I worked with them in until February, and then they said we'd like to give you a screen test. And I thought you, like we did in rehearsals, you had a little movie camera, and that's how you made a movie. I had no technical experience or anything like that. So anyway, so I was like, yeah, all right, whatever, and I do the screen test. Like, now don't go out the night before. You can't tell somebody like me that, right? That's what we did back then. So anyway, my call was like 5 o'clock down at Mother Soundstage the next morning. And of course,
Was it in like the where was the was it like in Queens at like Little Cut? Where was
it
the
was
center?
Mother Soundstage. Was that down on Fifth Street, maybe?
Hmm.
Whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, so I go in. Remember, I'm born in the 60s. So I don't know what eyebrows were, red lipstick, any of that stuff. And I'm like, you want me to wear that, with the face? And of course, I thought I knew everything and I knew nothing. But I learned because I was taught to learn how to listen from DeNiro, Scorcese, and God bless my Joe Pesci. And it went on from then. So 17 and 18 and 19 while I did the movie because it took like a year. And I was 20 when it came out.
So
So
now
I
wait
got
a minute. You had to have that hiatus when De Niro changed his entire body, right? They
yeah,
had to
but
be
it was only 6 weeks.
what?
But he started gaining the weight earlier. That was one of my biggest mistakes was having lunch with him every day because I ended up gaining weight. But we'd sit and have milkshakes and cheese. Like I was like, this is great. And then I saw my ass just getting wider and wider. It was like, whoa, it is true. But yeah, we just really went on where we completely shut down. It was only about 6, 7 weeks. And I know he went off to Italy, but he had started gaining the weight before and stuff. And then I didn't see him for like a full month. And then he came back and he was like, hey, Kath. And I was like, yes. I didn't even recognize him. He had put on like 40 pounds in a month on top of the first 20. But they were great to me. I don't have the horror stories or the war stories. I can make some up. I could give you some. But all in all, I mean, that was free college. It's not like I was getting a scholarship. Your sound went off, honey. Your sound is off. Yeah, I don't hear you. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry
now you're
about
back.
that. I was trying to take us live on Instagram and
No,
it didn't
that's why
work.
I
So
try not to
so
to touch anything.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I
So
said to my daughter, I said, "Can you stay home tonight? I'm coming over." And she was like, "Why?" I said, "I need your laptop. I need you to push buttons." And she's like, "I got you, Mom. I got you."
what would we do without our kids? I would not know how to do anything without my kids.
I don't know who I'd even be without them. And then you think back, and I was like, I don't know, they'll ask me about stories and stuff. It's like, God, that was before I had you guys. Then I'll remember, and so then I'll tell them the story. But I don't know. I know they're not that old, but it's a huge chapter of my life.
Okay, so we're going to digress and then we'll come back to this part. Do your kids appreciate who you are? Like my kids have never read my book. They don't ever want to watch my show. They don't know. I'm mom, right? This is who I like.
That's it, yeah.
Do your kids, my kids appreciate the sweat, right? They like to meet celebrities. They like all of that stuff, which,
They like
but
the
they,
perk.
yeah,
Yeah, they like the perks, but they're like my son is in producing and stuff, and Bella, who you met, she's a screenwriter and an actress. And then my little Kathy's my little culinary genius and loves cooking. So we kind of tie everything in together. It fits well in my life anyway, you know.
yeah.
And so I think them as adults now, I mean, I had already accomplished all this stuff by the time I was their age. And
Right.
then, everything fell apart. And then, you reinvent and recreate. But they know that work isn't all fun anymore, that you really got to put time in and effort and show up. And when they like come, because they've always come to work with me. But as adults, they're like, oh, maybe she's a little tired, you know? Like when they're like, well, when do I go home? I was like, when I tell you to go home. It's a 14-hour day, guys. We don't, show up for an hour and it's happy. You have to work. You
Have
have
they
to work.
watched your films?
They have. I remember my son, Joseph, when he was like 3, he was watching the TV, looking at me, looking at the TV, looking at me. Because you silly mom. You're silly. He was watching Casper or something. And I think it was the first time he realized, oh, mommy's inside the TV. He was only like 2 or 3, but I remember that. I I just they thought that it was all normal.
Right.
But I was really low key. Like, I take kind of big pride in for 40 years I've flown under the radar. You never read about me. I'm
Never.
definitely don't make headlines. Nothing's gonna come back to bite me in the ass so far. Which is my way of life, but I always kept my family safe and not secretive. But if I didn't want to be seen or people to know anything, I'd stay home because you have that choice.
Okay,
But
so
if they
now
want,
let's go back to the Johnny Carson thing. Then we're going to go before that. But
uh,
so that's you couldn't be more high profile than to be on the Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show with Johnny
but
Carson,
for
right?
a year, I didn't really talk to anybody. We finished the movie, it was right before Christmas, and it came out the following year.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's not like they were like, Cathy, are you okay? We weren't that buddy chubby. Now it's time for the movie to come out. I didn't know what ADR or looping or anything was. And I remember going down to meet Scorcese, and I was in LA, and he showed me, and I was like, that's what I look like? He goes, yes, that's. I said, whose voice is that? He said, that's yours. I said, oh, no, 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 because I am not going to sound like that. And I remember talking about it on Johnny Carson. I sounded like a truck driver. And you had your keywords. It's not walk, talk, or walk, talk. And so I could do that, but it's a New York movie. But I didn't know what an interview was or, things like that. I didn't know that you do publicity. And then it all got thrown on me in a week. And then like it got nominated for Oscars and Golden Globes and
You
stuff.
got
And
nominated for an Oscar. Forget
yeah,
it.
I did, yeah.
Oh, I
So
can't
I
believe
don't
I just
know.
did. So what okay, so we're going to talk about things as they come. What the hell is that like that here you are, you're not an actress, you make your first film, you get
Well,
nominated.
well, I was an
Oh,
actress
you
and
were. Okay.
I
I was
wanted to be an
misled.
actress since I was a
Okay.
little kid. I just wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
And I applied for a grant to go to acting school. Oh, I was 15, 16. My parents are immigrants from Ireland, so things like that just weren't going to happen. There were a bunch of us, a lot of us.
Right.
And so Yale wasn't knocking at my door. I'll just put it that way, okay? So I applied for a grant to go to acting school. And back then they didn't consider acting a profession. So they said, why don't you be a nurse? I said, I don't want to be a nurse. I want to play a nurse, which I did twice.
Yes, you did.
I was like, I don't understand. I'm trying to go to school. My parents don't make money. We're whatever. Somebody help me here. So I went to work and I started working in the garment center and, just do an open casting called Dinner Theater at the Elmsford Dinner
Oh,
Theater.
see, I was misinformed. So
Yeah, everybody has.
you were doing all of
I
this
was
stuff.
trying to. I didn't have an agent. I had nothing. We used to go to this club on Sunday nights and I wanted this pair of shoes. And one day I'm going to remake these shoes and I love them. And after going to the beach or whatever, Sunday night, they had either a talent contest, a dance show, whatever. There's a place called Hoops. And it was one of our little hangouts. So I was dating somebody at the time and I was like, I just want those damn shoes, They were so beautiful. They were an open toe and they were black suede with leather and an ankle strap that you could take off if you wanted to. And I want these shoes again. But they were expensive. I could, where are you going to come up with $100 at 15, 16, 17 years old for a pair of shoes? And it's not like you could shoplift them, so shoes.
Although,
But anyway, so I was dared. They're like, just go enter the bathing beauty contest. We were coming from the beach, so we had our bathing suits still on. And if you don't win, I'll give you the money for the shoes. Fine. I ended up winning. He didn't give me the money for the shoes, but I did get the shoes. Wore them down to the bone.
wow.
And anyway, from that, Joe Pesci was running a restaurant up in the Bronx that I guess most of these people are dead, so it doesn't make a difference. And I'm sorry that they are. My dad used to work down at this place now, whatever the name of the place was, and they used to get a lot of seafood in. So I met them not through the movie. I had known Joe Pesci and stuff before because
was this like Arthur Avenue? What part of the Bronx?
Yeah, Arthur Avenue.
Okay.
I used to sell them fish out of the trunk of my car every second Friday. And that's how I met them. Then they came down the club and they saw my picture. They're like, you look like this lady, Vikki LaMotta. You should send your picture in. I was like, okay. And I, I was doing dinner theater and, whatever stupid things you could do. And I did not like modeling. It just, not for me, just very confining and just not my thing. I'm too creative and I'm too animated. It's very hard for me to sit still. But
So
anyway,
wait a second. So what kind of dinner theater? Like what kind, were you doing comedy? Were you doing drama? Were you doing both?
whatever the play was, and if you didn't get the part, you waitress, and Wednesday night was senior night, which was always a disaster, Take their teeth out, put it on the table, more potatoes, lady, it sucked. They asked me years later if I'd like to come back, and I was, no, thank you. But I liked theater, I liked all that, but I got fortunate on Raging Bull, but people think that they came knocked at my door with a silver platter, which never happened. I sent my picture in, and Sis Corman,
and you had studied prior to that.
No, I was trying to get money to go study. I'm 17,
Okay.
and I applied for the grant to go to acting school, but told me to be a nurse. So now I have to go to work, and I was trying to save up enough money to go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Whatever.
But had you taken like a drama class in high school or anything
Oh,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
place, South Pacific. Yeah. Mr. V
yeah. Yeah.
was my English and our acting coach. And that went well. It was good. But there were so many of us. It was hard for me to commit because you'd have to be after school all the time then. And my parents needed help. I mean,
Right.
and there were just a lot of kids, so a lot of mouths to feed. Anyway, so I sent my picture in, which was like a little 3x5. But then they had come down to Hoops one night because the Bronx and Mount Vernon, whatever, and Yonkers, they all touch. And they saw me up on a screen. And they're like, you got to send that picture in. I was like, I don't even know how to get that picture. Anyway, Sis Corman called and, can you come down and meet me? And so I did. I met her a couple of times and sides. I didn't know what a side was, and she goes, I have some scenes. Not that we read anything from the script in that whole movie anyway. And I read for her a couple of times and I go back every day at like 5:30 after work. I was working in the garment center. And anyway, she goes, I want you to meet two of my friends. I was like, all right. I walked down a long hallway. She goes, Cap, this is Bobby and Marty. I was like, hey, how you doing? Not realizing it was like Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese.
Wow.
It really even made a difference to me. And they'd have me come back almost every day at the end of the day. Then they went to California for 2 weeks to cast, and
And
they didn't call me.
were you reading with DeNiro?
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we would improvise, we'd do readings. They would tell me about Vicki, all stuff. But the movie, they were very cautious with me on that particular movie because the movie was based through Jake LaMotta's eyes, how he saw Vicki.
Right,
I was I was portraying a real life person, and I
right.
did have concerns about that. And then Scorsese, he explained it to me in detail that this is how Jake sees Vicki. So yeah, you might not say that, and you might not think that Vicki would have said it, and maybe most likely she didn't. But this is what he heard and what he thought, which was his mania. So then things would go a little smoother and stuff. But it was difficult. I was 18 years old and given 3 days notice because they decided not to shoot in New York at first and go right to LA for 2 or 3 months and do all the boxing scenes first because of the weight gain and all that stuff. So off I went with, my $125 and my suitcase. And that was that.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And what
yeah.
a life changer. And so were your parents w- w- ha- so you quit your job in the garment center, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
And so did your parents realize like right away, okay, this is an opportunity, this is great. Did they support you in it? Or were they like, what are you doing?
A little bit of both. A
A
little
little
bit of
bit of
both.
both. Okay.
I was a little ahead of my time, I think. And, I couldn't explain it to them because they didn't understand something I didn't understand quite yet. I mean, they knew
Hmm.
I wanted to be an actress, and we'd watch old 50s movies, and I was in love with Born Yesterday with Judy Holliday.
Mm.
That's when I saw that the first time I saw that. I just was like, I have to be an actress. And then back to school night, my English teachers would always tell my parents that might be a good career for her. She's got a lot going on. She's got a big personality, a lot of people in there. So, they did support me to the best that they knew how to. It's like my mother even drove me to the city a couple of times. Usually it was just, but I remember I finally said to them, listen, I can't stay here past 9 o'clock at night because I got robbed on the subway twice. I was like, you have to
Oh
send me a
my.
cab. Yeah. But anyway, I did that for how many months, finally got the screen test, and they called me right away and said, okay, you have the part. And then I didn't know what to do. It's like, okay, I got through this part. Do I fake it again for another 6 months? What do I do? So anyway, and Raging Bull was made. There you go.
Was it intimidating to be all right? So you had done theater, you had taken,
I did
drama
not
in high
do
school.
Broadway. I did dinner theater and I
Yeah,
did plays in high school.
right.
It's like I had an IMDb page, you know what I mean? But yeah, my parents were supportive. Are you sure this is what you want to do? And what is it exactly? And who's this guy, Robert De Niro? They didn't know who he was.
Right.
Throw off the boat. My dad came over in 52. My mother came over in 53 from Ireland. They knew nothing about movies. They knew like Maureen O'Hara was from Ireland. That's about it. But I told them that's what I'm doing, and nobody could tell me what to do back then. But if I had to do back then, now I would never be able to do any of it. At 17, I had no fear. Now I'm scared of everything because I used up all that energy. But I just didn't think. I just did. I just did. They told me do this. I did that most of the time, not all the time, but I went with the flow. But I learned to listen and to be able to create a character, and then you can say anything. Everything makes sense if you're in character and the other person's in character. And Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Scorsese, they helped me to develop that and learn that. Where you could turn
Did
it
you
on,
just
turn it off.
listen? Did you ask questions or did you learn from just listening and watching?
Oh, I asked too many questions. Then they told me you better shut up and start listening. No, I asked questions because I didn't listen. To this day I get confused with camera left, camera right. Just tell me move to my right. You're like, okay, camera left. But even at the screen test, and Scorsese's on the paler side, right? So anyway, I had to dress up in 50s or 40s clothes, whenever it was, and the red lipstick and the frigging eyebrows, which now we wish we had, right? I
Right.
got to put them on every day. And Scorsese looked, he goes, all right, you ready, Cathy? And I think we were doing the pool scene or something. I was like, yeah. He goes, all right, action. And there were like hundreds of people around, all the construction workers building the sets and stuff. He's like, what's wrong, Cathy? I said, well, I'm waiting for everybody to leave. He goes, they're not leaving. I said, well, why didn't you tell me that to begin with? I was like, all right, then let's just do it. And I was able to do it and never see the camera. And that
Wow.
was, I guess, maybe my hidden talent. But they were so natural. And, of course, we all had fights and stuff, but they had a kindness towards me, but they liked keeping me not in the loop. Like when Vicki came to California, they sent me back to New York because they did not want our paths crossing, because
Really?
she would have influenced me, because the movie wasn't her life story,
Right.
but it also wasn't her side of the story. It was seen through Jake LaMotta's eyes.
Right.
So they were able to control that without anybody influencing me if they kept me away from everybody. I mean, they would actually put my hair up in pin curls when we were leaving at night so I wouldn't go out. I just put a hat on and go out anyway, but to try and keep me. Don't let her out of anybody's sight. But then again, I remember so many times walking down Sunset Boulevard with Joe Pesci and, come on, we'll go out for dinner, we'll get something to eat. And they always looked after me and made sure I was okay. Then when I kind of got my wings a little bit, I don't know if they quite liked that all the time because I wasn't so reliant on them. Then when I finally turned 18, I was like, listen, I need a car. You're going to have to rent me a car. Now you can't control me at all. But I don't have like really bad experiences. Maybe I don't remember them, but I just took the good out of it.
And you
And
weren't
I
intimidated
learned so
acting
much.
with De Niro against
I
De
loved
Niro?
learning. What on?
You weren't intimidated doing scenes with Robert De Niro? I mean, like,
I'm more intimidated now. I've done what, 3 or 4 movies with him now.
right.
Now I'm not intimidated by him.
That's so great.
No, it's funny because if I called him today, he'd answer the phone.
Yeah.
We do a lot of similar charities. My one impression of Robert De Niro is what a great father
Mm.
he is. And I remember Raffaello, who's, a grown man now. I remember we went somewhere one day and I was babysitting him. He was only like 4 or something. But I thought, always consider myself such an adult. Now they're like, I'm only 15 years older than them and they're grown adults. But he just, his kindness, and me, the animal lady, right? And I love kids and I love animals. I prefer that over humans. I like children and I love my dogs and my cats. I just like animals and kids. I like people too, but I don't know. I just kind of went to the beat of my own drum a little bit.
And
They took the time. They took the time.
you were never seduced by the whole Hollywood that never called you?
Yeah. It wasn't my thing. It's like, I had every opportunity a million years ago to model and stuff, and I just didn't like it. It
Mm-hmm.
never called me. I never wanted to be a movie star. I always wanted to be an actress.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I could have rode that nice ship too. I chose not to. And then a lot of times by the time I would have chosen to, the opportunity wasn't there anymore. I had done Raging Bull, I had done Neighbors right after to show versatility, because you got to remember, I finished Raging Bull. It took a year for it to come out. I had no idea how harsh of a movie that was or how violent. And
Really?
I was there. I made it. Yeah.
Right.
I just remember like a lot of the fight scenes, they finally taught me how to throw a punch, but most of the slaps were pretty real and stuff.
Yeah, but you and De Niro went after, you had a
Yeah,
violent relationship, not just what
yeah,
he was doing in the
yeah.
ring.
It's weird because I justified it I don't think I ever mentioned this story ever. It bothered me so much that for 2 years I was playing this woman basically, right? And I never met her. And I had sent her letters and I was like offended because she never responded to me. They weren't giving each of us, because she wrote me letters, phone call. They did not
Oh,
want us in contact whatsoever. So now I finished the movie
wow.
Christmas week. It was our last scene. Movie's over. I don't know what happens from there. Perhaps maybe I'll get an agent. I had agents calling, trying to represent me. Nobody told me anything. Anyway, I worked all that out, obviously, but it bothered me immensely that I portrayed a woman who's still alive. So I finally was able to get in touch with her or find a number for her. And I flew myself down to Florida and met with her and went to her house and stayed the weekend, which meant there was no sleep. All we did was talk, and we became best friends. They never had a premiere for Raging Beau. Now, Vicki would fly out to LA and stay with me. I'd come to New York. She moved to New York. We just became like sisters, really good friends.
Wow.
Now the movie's coming out.
Oh, this is
She's
all
seeing it.
before the movie came out.
Yeah, after we finished it in December, Christmas week. It came out the following year,
Right.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever it was. That February, in between, I finally was able to get a contact number for her. And I reached out to her, and this
How
time we
much
both got it.
older than you is she?
Oh, at least 25 years, maybe
Mm-hmm.
30.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, she was in her 50s and she had just done the Playboy Centerfold. So she was over 50. And I guess no, I was, yeah, she was 30 years older than me. I was about 20 then. And we saw the movie at the same time, kind of. That was a year later. But before that, in that February, I flew down to Florida for the weekend. She picked me up in her little orange Datsun 260 or 280Z. And we spent the weekend just talking and getting to know each other. Now I
Wow.
don't see her, but we're in touch and we're talking all the time. And the movie comes out. They don't have a premiere for it. Scorsese's still walking down the street. Back then you had, the film in the can, whatever. And they played it. There was no premiere, nothing. And I looked, I was like, do you hate me? And she goes, no, that was the most innocent portrayal ever. She understood. And we just really just bonded. Then the movie came out and I was noted as like a good actress, whatever. And I got nominated that morning. And I'm a bit of a runner. Like if I don't know what to do, all right, I'll just leave. I'll deal with it later. Which I could do because I didn't have kids yet. So they said, would you like to go to Europe? I was like, sure. You don't get nominated and then take off for 6 weeks. It's very stupid. But that's what I did anyway. Then I wanted to continue my little European tour and go to Italy. And they're like, you can't. You have to come home for the Oscars. I was like, ugh. So I just went to the beat of my own drum, I guess. But Vicki and I did a tour of Europe together, 2 days here, 2 days there. But it was the greatest trip of my life,
Wow.
because we just didn't care. We just went to taste food, go to all these countries and get to know each other. We were inseparable. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was beautiful. And then for all those years now, then she'd call me at the restaurants on Sunday nights. She knew I always went down on a Sunday and we'd chit chat all the time. Then she got sick. She got sick, the poor thing. Then they had the 25th anniversary for Raging Beau and they had a big world premiere. And I had been talking to her and talking to her, and I hadn't heard from her in a couple of weeks. And I had 3 kids, I had 3 kids in a year.
Right.
They were infants, whatever. And she wasn't there that night. And I was very upset about it. And then they finally told me it was actually Jake LaMotta's, I don't know, fifth, sixth, eighth wife, whatever.
Huh.
She's Vicki passed away on Tuesday. And I was not much ever took me down, but I literally was like, felt like my knees buckle. I was like, waited all this time. to just, be together and, hope that she'd be really proud. And she had passed away that Tuesday. She had been very sick. And I regret like not getting on a plane and going down to help her or see her, but she didn't tell anybody either. She just didn't. But that was poor Vicki, my little love. And she was beautiful, inside and out. Just a beautiful soul. And it's funny, like a couple of years ago, somebody had sent me
Wow.
a book that they wrote about her. And to turn it into a life story. I said, nobody can play Vicki after that, and that's the story that nobody wants that story anyway, of like what happened to her after. But it makes you think and wonder when you portray a person or movies that you go and watch and how visual things are and the impact that we just believe what we saw by getting to know the person, that individual themselves, and what would set them off to do this and react like that, and how did you handle this, and how did you handle the beatings, how did you know how to protect yourself, things like that, which aren't normal questions for a 20-year-old to like ask.
Right, right.
But I needed to know, like she would wrap herself in towels if she knew he was coming home in a bad mood and stuff.
Oh my.
And, yeah, it was bad. It was bad. She couldn't leave. She couldn't leave because she had to take care of her kids, but she was a wonder. And, so I
Did
miss
she
her.
feel, did she feel that you got her?
Yes. Yes, she did. She gave me 110% approval. She goes, that's not. She goes, I said, I know. I said, but I did the best I could with what they gave me. They didn't give me a lot to work with,
And then once
because
you got to know her, did you feel that you had, without knowing her, gotten her
it's kind of
essence?
survival mode. I
Mm-hmm.
did. It was like survival mode that I understood. It helped me to understand. I was like, why didn't this say to me? I was like, what's wrong with that dumb bitch? Why didn't she just get up and leave? Then when you're put in the same circumstances, kind of, and you live it, you're like, she couldn't. She couldn't because she was such an unselfish person.
Mm.
She always put her kids and her family and even Jake first, And then I got to meet, she had a son with somebody else. She had married only once after in Harry. I don't know what happened to Harry, but he was a grown man then. He was 18 when I met him. All the years had passed. And she just, she didn't like the whole Hollywood thing either. She just wanted to be a mom. That's it, but also pay her bills because she wasn't given an awful lot. It's, it definitely wasn't a Hollywood marriage or anything like that. Everybody lost everything. But so I did understand that essence of survival mode. A lot of people don't. And, with abuse victims and stuff like that, walk a day in their shoes or walk a minute in their shoes of, why didn't you just leave? Obviously, if it was that easy, people that are in that situation would leave.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't see that, perhaps their lives are threatened, their children's lives, what's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen to your kids if you leave. So she explained that part of why she did certain things and her misunderstanding. You have to remember, Vicki was only 15 when she met Jake.
Wow.
Now I'm 17 and I'm playing somebody who's from 15 to 35. Like, I don't know how to play 35. I'm 18. I'll
Right,
give it a
right.
shot. And I would like to say that they put a lot of time into makeup, but they really didn't. I just looked there. I always looked old.
No.
I was never like 15. I was always,
That was our thing back then, was
that
to
was
look
our
older.
thing.
If we only
Yeah.
knew
Nobody asked me if we only knew, right?
Mhm.
I don't think anybody asked me for ID until like 15 years ago. Somebody
Mhm.
asked me for ID because you needed ID to buy cigarettes.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, here, I have it. I'm so proud to be proofed or carded, whatever they call it. I grew up back in the day where there was no picture on your license. So
Right.
not that
Yeah, we
anybody,
were drinking in bars at 14, of course.
oh, I was not 14. 15, yes. 14. 14 was my awkward year. 15, I bloomed. Yeah, and 16, it was pretty good.
Yeah. Before we get off Raging Bull, how was it to I mean, Scorsese, De Niro, how was it to do those scenes, those very violent
I didn't
to
think about it. I trust it and I did it, but I understood it and they took time.
were they
I
heavily
grew up in the
choreographed so
Bronx.
that you would be safe?
No,
No. So
no.
like how were you safe? Like
One
did
time
he
he wasn't supposed to hit me or anything. It just felt like it. I guess I pissed him off. And he slapped me so hard you could hear my head hit the wall. And I
wow.
kind of snapped out. I was no longer Vicki then. Then I was like Cathy Moriarty fight mode, you know. But at the same token, you know what? It could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse, but I didn't enjoy being hit. That I can tell you. And they tried to go lightly. The fight scenes and everything was very choreographed, but when it came to the domestic violence, personal stuff, those were not choreographed because none of us really knew what was going to happen. I just remember getting to the bathroom scene, which was one
Oh
of the hardest.
yeah.
And they said, we only have 6 doors. I was like, oh, geez, thank God, right? And they had a bucket with sea breeze and a chamois that after each take, if he hit me or something, they'd cool down my face. Because it got bad where, like, I'd start bruising and stuff. And that was
Wow.
not fun. That was not fun. But I did understand it. And Scorsese was great. I still have them somewhere. I don't know, some garage somewhere. He would storyboard the scenes for me and explain it to me like a comic strip. And I'd be like, oh, now because it's very hard to understand his
Right.
brilliant, you
Right.
know? And he would always walk around looking at me like this. So I do this back to him. And then I noticed a lot of the religious connotations and, all that kind of stuff in the scenes. Everything was so masterminded and planned. It was pretty
How about
amazing.
for De Niro? Was he apologetic with you? Did he have a hard time, or was he able to just when the camera would go, just go for it and just
The dedicated man, a dedicated man that, I mean, lunchtime, the gym. He's resilient.
Mhm.
He would stay in character a lot, and that was okay. That was okay. But then he would take the time out and we'd have dinner or something, whatever. He would spend some time with me. We'd go through the old photo albums, which helped me because I didn't
Hmm.
understand the 30s, 40s, 50s. I didn't understand the 60s for that matter. But just looking at her hairstyles and why would they put me in that outfit? It's ugly. Like, Cathy, don't say that. Doing the rooftop wedding, just like every detail was catered to. And it was just such a learning experience that something that you think is so unimportant and frivolous is so key to them. So important. So it gave me a great appreciation of film, number one, of errors, made me start doing my research. I better get on this horse too and be on the same page as everybody and at least learn something about her family. Why did she leave home at 15 and get married? I needed a little backstory of Vicki before. I understand it's through Jake's eyes, but I needed a little bit to know about Vicki, why she would tolerate such
Were you able to get it? Were you able
yeah.
to find out?
I was able to find out enough to help me to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped me, like, even just going through old photo albums and news clippings. And like, it's funny because I've only seen the movie, I think twice. And then I've seen like clips and stuff of it. And it takes me so far back because I can remember each day and I could
Mm-hmm.
see myself aging. And I just remember the long hallway, the way it was shot. Everything was black and white. But I didn't realize you saved a lot of money by shooting in black and white as opposed to color. But also, when you look in Florida, you think of color, right? When you look at New York, you think of gray, brown, black. It's black and white New York to me.
Right.
Always was. And I was a true New Yorker. Going out to California, it had nothing to do with being an actress or the movie or anything like that. I had a hard time adjusting to a different environment. I didn't like California. It was not for me. I ended up staying, I come back and forth, back and forth. But I just remember I could never live here, and then lived there for what, 35 years? I mean, I'm only moved back to New York about 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
I think
so,
about more.
so now here you are working with arguably the greatest American director who's ever
This was a
been.
little during the time because this is just like a note of reference. DeNiro was nominated for Best Actor and won for Deer Hunter. So I'm still trying to catch up on their movies. Thank God it wasn't a lot. Because so then I saw Main Streets and I saw Taxi Driver, and I understood this whole violent way. I still have the original script, but like it's not like you went to work. You know how you get sides when you go to work, or you get a script and you study and you do readings and rehearsal. No, we didn't do that. We
What'd you
didn't.
do?
They kind of just really cultivated me and gave me one-on-one private acting lessons
Mm,
and left out the technical part. They earned, that's not a good word. They did earn my trust though, but they built my trust in them because I'm not a very trusting person.
mm,
Because I have to protect myself, right? And I was young, and you're throwing in an 18-year-old with these three 38-year-old men.
right.
And I'm by myself. I have no one, absolutely no one. And
You
I,
didn't have an agent at this point.
no, no, I
No.
had nothing. So they paid me scale minus the 10. Usually you got scale plus 10, but I didn't even,
Right.
yeah, I didn't even have an agent, but I learned a lot, and they hired me again, and I learned some more. Then after Raging Bull, it was so harsh of a movie, and then you read reviews and they gave me good reviews, but it wasn't that. I was like, I got to do something completely different. Otherwise, they're just going to think that's all I can do because Hollywood has a lot of tunnel vision and
Right.
you're typecast out of the gate. So I said, oh, I'll go do a comedy. That was brilliant, wasn't it?
And
Coming off of
had you
oh,
done comedy on stage? Had you done comedy?
in a high school play, yeah, I was actually very funny. I
No
knew I could
shit.
be funny, but
Obviously, you're
I
just
didn't
a funny
realize
person.
comedy is so much harder than drama.
Yes.
So much harder for me. I'm not saying for everybody. And then comedic timing, but I had known John Belushi and Dan Ackroyd, and I adored them. And then they took me under their wing, and
How did that happen? How did you get Neighbors?
they offered it to me coming off of Raging Bull, and I didn't want to do it. And they,
Now what now where would they come to think that this girl from the Bronx who's doing this, the heaviest movie in the history of movies, is going to be the right girl to do Neighbors?
they this happened. I did Neighbors, I think in April I started. So Raging Bull came out in December, whatever. Then all this big commotion happened with all these awards and shit. And can I curse? I
Yes, of
just
course.
um anyway, so then I went, I met with John and Dan, and I didn't I thought I was like, no, this is wrong for me. I'm not comfortable enough in this zone, and I'm not educated enough also. And I think I was a little insecure because I didn't have the education. I felt like I didn't deserve it quite yet
Mm,
because I didn't work hard enough for it yet. Meanwhile, yeah, I did. I realize that now as an old lady, but back then you're like, well, what do you mean? But then I was looking at comedy and how much harder it was. And John and Dan were so sweet. They're like, Cathy, please, you have to do this movie. And then John Avildsen came on board, who just won the Oscar for doing Rocky. And I was like, and I wasn't educated enough. I don't know if I would have made the same decision. I think I would have.
hmm.
But I mean, what Dan and John taught me is just nobody could ever teach me that. They get me the biggest roast beef sandwich. They buy me like funky clothes and stuff. They were so kind to me. And it was not, how would you put it? Not the best period in any of our lives, really. It's funny because I was doing something for this writer recently. And I said, who's playing my son? He goes, you're not going to believe this, but John's going to play your son. John who? John Avildsen's son ended up playing my son. This thing, I just did it a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
And it was so many years since I've seen his dad and stuff. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, I remember him when he was 10, you know,
Wow.
and keep forgetting I was only 17, 18 myself. So it's not, you know, back then that's a big, oh, she's old. It's, you know, now it's like 10 years is not a big disparity in age or anything. But it's just how weird like life comes full circle on certain things. So I decided to do Neighbors to show versatility. And it wasn't my favorite movie by no means. And we should not have been behind the wheel of the car, if you know what I mean. Not back then, but I learned an awful
That
lot
was a really
from
rough, I mean, that was like at the end of
it.
Belushi's life,
It ended
wasn't
up
it?
becoming very culty. Once John and Dan switched parts before we
Uh,
started shooting,
Oh.
and John was supposed to play the nut. Instead, he ended up playing the straight guy. It just it didn't work for me. Some people love it. That's my favorite movie, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm happy for you. Fine. It just wasn't. It just wasn't. I didn't. It was just a odd time in life, I think, for all of us. But
Well, it was personally a very tough time in Belushi's life, wasn't it, at the end of his
John,
life?
I was the last person to work with him. Yeah.
Wow.
Um. Yeah, and Catherine Walker, who ended up playing John's wife in it. Um, her fiance had passed away, and it was just a bit of a mess. Everybody
Mm,
was not 100% themselves, but
mm.
you know, we got through it, and some people liked it, some people didn't. But I was the last person to work with John Belushi and Dan Ackroyd. His kindness to me when we'd be standing in Staten Island with mosquitoes gnawing at you, and he'd just come to set just to hang out, you know, just to be a support system. All of those wonderful, touching moments, I will
Mm.
never forget. Yeah, so
Wow.
good times. More good than bad, right?
Are you still
More good.
friends today? Are you still friends?
I am still friends with everybody I've worked with. There's very few people I've worked with that I chose not to remain friends with.
Mm.
And very few, I could count them on less, I don't even need a whole hand. But I always like stayed in touch with everybody. I mean, I haven't talked to Joe Pesci in a while, but we spent a lot of time together and we used to talk more, but you know, life goes on, right? And I ended up doing, what did I do? Trying to think of the name of the movie. Analyze that with Bobby, with Robert DeNiro. And I did, oh, and Copland. And Copland I did with him as well.
Copland,
Forgot
what a
about
film. I was just telling Snuffy today, we're going to watch that tonight. That's a great film. That is a,
Copland was an amazing, amazing film. And it was James Mangold's first big movie.
mm,
He's a brilliant director. So now I'm into directors now of who I want to work with. Yeah, I want to work with all the actors. Then Soapdish happened, and that was like half my bucket list was gone. I love Sally Field. I
oh
love
my
Robert.
God.
And now it's like I get to work with all of them in one movie, which
Wow.
I didn't even get the part at first. Somebody else got it. I was still in bed, feeling sorry for myself, having a pity party. And my agent then, Tony Howard, like, Kath, they're sending a car. Get in it and get to New York. It's like they already told me I didn't get it. They changed their mind. I don't know if this is a true story or not, but I'll tell it anyway. I heard that they had offered it to Gina Davis, and she pulled out to do Thelma and Louise. So I thank that woman every day because I kept trying out for Soapdish and kept trying out. And I love Michael Hoffman, the director, and I love the cast, and I didn't get it. And I was defeated. I was just heartbroken. And then I went to New York. I was like, but I don't have clothes. I can't do all this in 40 minutes, you know, frantic. Like, they'll give you another plane ticket, fly somebody in with your clothes. I was like, all right. So I get there and we're staying at the Regency. And, you know, they put a call sheet under your door and they put the call sheet under my door and I'm all excited. And now I'm screen testing again. And I get all excited and then I look at the top of the call sheet and it had a different actress's name on it. Now I'm devastated again.
Oh
Now
my
it's
God.
trending the next day, so they had to make a decision. because Montana Moorhead was shooting at 5 o'clock the next night, you know.
Wow.
So then I ended up getting the part, and it was one of my favorite movies of all times because it was such
Fantastic film.
one of my absolute all-time favorites. Yes, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Yeah,
And
nothing.
so you had as much fun filming it as we had watching it?
I hope so. Yeah, I did. I
Mhm.
did. I was very serious about it. They're like, go bigger. I was like, how much bigger can I go? Everything was about big hair, big boobs, big earrings, you know. But great experience. And then I kind of, because I didn't work for quite a few years. Um, I got in a really bad car accident, and it was bad.
Oh,
And a couple of years before I went back to work, and before I could walk and rehabilitate, I severed my nerve. I had drop foot. It was just a mess, broke my back.
ah,
Then I came back in doing, oh no, so then they were doing two Jakes, um, which ended up being a disaster. But when I was doing it, it was Jack Nicholson, of course, Robert Towne, Bob Evans, Kelly McGillis, and myself. Now, I look a lot like Faye Dunaway, right?
you
Kind
do.
of.
You do.
So I was like, well, I have a good shot at getting this part because I really look like the daughter. This is where the daughter takes off
Right.
from Chinatown. The
Right.
two Parts is the sequel to Chinatown. But I didn't get that part. Then I even felt better because I got to play somebody completely different. So it wasn't based on my looks. So anyway, we all lose our 40 pounds and dye our hair platinum and, start doing our thing. And we went to work one day. They started shooting the first day. We just went for wardrobe and stuff. And then the next day, I think Kelly and myself, we went and there were padlocks on all the trailers and stuff.
What?
Paramount said if three grown men can't get along, we'll show them the studio still in charge. And they shut it down. So when they ended up redoing two Jakes, it came off to pretty bad reviews. And it's funny because Kelly called me. She goes, did they invite you to the premiere? I was like, they did. She goes, are you going? I said, absolutely not. So I think we ended up going out for dinner or something. But, just weird how things happen in life. But I was ready to go back to work then. I was able to physically function because the car accident had physically hurt me badly. Anyway, it was time to go back to work. So I had to, you got to crawl before you walk, they say, right? So I had to scratch back at it. And then I did a small part in Kindergarten Cop.
Which was fantastic. And I
Yeah,
love
nice
that.
little part I could handle, working my way back in. Then I was doing Soapdish. Then I did Mambo King. Then I started working and working and doing the restaurants at the same time because I loved cooking. And the reason I ended up cooking and doing the restaurants back then was when we had the first restaurant, always remember when you catch somebody doing something wrong, do not fire them until after their shift. Otherwise, I end up in the kitchen. And- But that's the one thing that tied in for all those years. When I was doing Raging Bull, Marty's mother, Catherine, who I adored, taught me how to make the best meatball and lasagna.
Wow.
Carried that tradition down a million years. And I'm not even Italian, but I seem to have a market on it, you know.
Wow. Well, the best pizza. I don't know what you had to do with that, but it's the
Yeah,
best pizza.
good pizza, good product, good product.
It's good product. So
Yeah.
you flipped back and forth between comedy and drama so much from, the Mama King's
Yeah.
coming on. Do you have a preference?
No, no. Then I discovered animation and voiceovers. That I really liked.
And
So
why
I would
is
do,
that?
oh, because you can go to work before you go to work. You'd stop in the morning in your pajamas before you get to set, do a cartoon or two, and go to work. I don't know. It was fun. And because there's no cameras on you, you have no inhibitions of how you're supposed to be. So you could be like kind of wild and go for it. And it was a freedom that I wanted behind the camera, but just my voice and not my face and stuff. So I liked it. I liked it a lot. And then I got Casper then, which was Amazing.
Eric
Amazing.
Idle.
Oh, picture being with him every day for 6 months.
I can't
How much
even, I
do
can't
I love
even.
that man?
Oh my God, I
It's like
can't even.
I can't give you like the bad nightmare stories because I don't have any. Everybody I worked with, they were just brilliant, you know? And
Wow.
I always ask them, you guys have to teach me one thing before I leave, whatever it is, but I want to learn one thing from each one of you. So it was a contest then. What are we going to teach Cathy today? How to like go down a hallway on a skateboard. Steven Spielberg would come up with like these contraptions for me. Cathy will do is like Mikey likes it, you know. But it just great experiences. And then I just learned it's all about learning. And I like learning. I like learning. You know, I always tell my kids, whether you do good or bad, as long as you did the best you could that day, you'll sleep that night. But every day, at the end of the day, what did you learn today? Whether it
Can
be
you
a
remember
word.
any takeaways that you got from any specific actors or directors?
Yeah, sure. You know, the physical comedy comes naturally if you have comedic timing. And if you play comedy straight, it's a lot funnier. So I believe about Montana Moorhead in Soapdish. So I just played her as I would have seen her and it worked. Then I was doing a movie and I got to have dinner with George C. Scott.
Oh.
I mean, and anyway, I was on the phone to home, whatever. And it was like, listen, George C. Scott wants to pick me up and take me for dinner. They're like, well, hang up with me then. You better go learn something, girl. And he gave me some unbelievable war stories from that era, which I wasn't alive for.
Mm.
But his demeanor and his just brilliance and how he earned the right to call somebody out when they weren't doing the right thing. And he would. And watching him do it gave me more pleasure than me doing it to somebody. Yeah, oh yeah. He'd call you down to the carpet if he didn't like it. But then other directors like Sidney Lumet, he just would sit there and stare at me. He goes, I think you were born in the wrong era, Cathy. He goes, you should have been born in the 50s. You had that, you know. So he always considered me like old Hollywood. Meanwhile, I
Hmm.
wasn't even 30, I don't think. But I took such joy in having a career and knowing that that would never be enough for me because I always wanted the family, I wanted business. But I finally let myself know that you don't have to do just one thing in life. You are
Hmm.
able to do many, many things. Some of them you'll be successful at, and some of them you won't. And I liked being proud and working hard. My parents instilled that in us, though, also good work ethic.
So let's go back to that for a minute. So Bronx Girl, as am I, you were
Mhm.
saying that a lot of kids. How many kids?
7.
Seven
And
of
then
you.
and then there were like always 3 extra kids that lived with us. Like my cousins, when their dad died, they stayed with us. The neighborhood kids ended up living in our house as usual. So there were
Oh my God. What
usually
did
a
your father
minimum
do
of
to pay
10.
to feed all these kids?
Not enough. That's why we were selling shrimp out of the trunk of my car. I said one day, I said, Mom, maybe we should buy Dad a new coat. He would tie it with a big rope. I said, I didn't know, and he has tape on it. Can we buy him a new coat? And then he'd come in, untie the rope, and like a salmon would fall out in a 5 pound block of shrimp. And I would sell it to Amici's where Joe Pesci was. But anyway, I don't think we can
Wow.
go for things like that now, can we? No.
Sure, of course. So no. And so
I hope
Alexander's, did you ever go to Jan's ice cream parlor on Fordham Road?
not often, not with that many kids. You didn't get
That's
to go.
right. You don't go to Jan's ice cream. But
Yeah, we did. That
then
was a
you lived
special
in
occasion.
Yonkers. Do you remember what was the name of that place? Stella Doro? Do you remember
Oh
Stella
my
Doro?
God. Remember we'd open our windows because they had the clock.
The smell was so good.
The smell was so good. I love Stella Doris. No, we were more the day old Arnold bakery thing. You know, you go to the day old to get the bread for 10
Sure.
people. You know,
And I learned how to ice skate in Yonkers. There was an ice skating
Murray's,
rink there.
Murray's ice skating rink.
Hmm.
Friday nights. That was our thing.
And there
If you
was a
asked
really
for
fancy place
250,
that I only got to go to once, Patricia Murphy's. You remember Patricia
oh,
Murphy's?
you got to go there.
I
Yeah.
once. I
I
got
got to go to
once.
the Red Coach Grill.
I don't even.
Somebody's communion. Hey, Ray. It was somebody's communion, and we got to go to the Red Coach Grill in Cross County, but I remember Alexander's like, no,
Oh my
tomorrow.
God. It was the
It was
best.
funny. We walked a lot. Like we lived,
Oh,
remember
sure.
University Avenue with all those stairs? And oh
Of
my God,
course.
forever. No wonder my little leggings, well, not so little anymore, but we go up and down those stairs constant. The Bronx was beautiful back then.
So what was your favorite slice? Because mine was Gloria's on Lydig Avenue. Because to me, the pizza of our youth is the pizza that I've always chased. What
Yeah,
was
we always like when we moved up to Yonkers, we go to Dunwoody. Actually, I stopped there on Sunday and got a slice.
Mm.
I went up to see my mom. My mom is she's 95, God bless her, and still with us.
Mine's 93 and still with us.
Half the time, so we all went up on Sunday to see her, and we drive her nuts. We drive her absolutely nuts, but she laughs. And to hear she's like 4'7", this tiny little thing, and there's the wrath of God, and then there's the wrath of Nanny. We're still scared of her. My dad, he's passed away now 20-something years, was this big, huge man, and he was like a gentle giant. And
Mm.
you kind of, my mother looks and she explains it. She goes, "We didn't do too bad. You're kind of all half sane anyway." And we did laugh though. So I had a great childhood. I grew up by Van Cortlandt Park
Mhm.
beginning, and my kids say, "You always talk about that, Mom." It was one of my greatest memories when we got our first house and we moved across the street from the Bronx to Yonkers at Van Cortlandt. And they
Right.
had Hilton Park, and they'd have a park leader. And I remember my younger two brothers and sisters would hold on to my shirt tails, and we'd walk down. We'd collect bottles. Popsicles were a nickel. And they had the best iced tea there. And we'd all collect all this stuff. And then all day long, I'd run across the street and buy candy and popsicles. But I don't know, they were the best summers of my life growing up. We didn't go to the beach or the pool. You couldn't. There were too many of us. But I remember certain things, but I remember the first slice that I really loved where I would come home, see my family and stuff. I got to run down to Dunwoody and get a slice. But I didn't like the one on 241st and White Plains Road. It was
Mhm.
just chewy for me. It wasn't crisp enough. But like my own pizza, I'm a plain girl. I like the plain, and I like the white with the spinach. The one without,
Well,
I like
as
that
I
one.
told you before we went live, Mulberry Street's our go-to. We order
Yeah.
it when my kids are here. We go to Snuffy and
And
I go down and we get a slice. Like it's just like being in
get
New
a
York. We go
slice.
down,
It's
we
New
get a
York
slice.
slice.
We
Yeah.
sit at the table. They bring us the slice. I mean, it's like
You could read the Post, the day old Post.
it's
If I'm
fantastic.
there, I'll yell at you. Yeah, no, it's something I'm very, very proud of, Mulberry Street. So I'm it's in good hands, and I'm glad it's 33, 30, 30, 32. It'll be 33 years, I guess, September.
Unbelievable. Okay, Kathy, so before we go, what is great? Tell me about Great Kills. This is like the latest thing that you've Great Kills. Great Kills? Some documentary thing that I see at 12 episodes that you've done. It says it's on your IMDb, Great Kills.
I did 12 episodes of Great
That's
Kills.
what it says on your IMDb.
Got to do better research, Vicki. No,
It's on your IMDb. I'm looking at it
I
right
did one
now.
episode as a favor, and I think they sold it, but I did not do 12
It
episodes.
says 12 episodes. Look at your IMDb. I am not making
I
this
don't
up.
have all that kind of stuff. I have an iPhone 6. And I
So,
refuse to give it
okay,
up because
so
I know how to work it.
So IMDb is wrong. So tell me
No,
what you
I
worked
just
during the pandemic though, right?
I did not work during the pandemic, no. But I did work recently. Like I have Beyond the Rush is coming out in November. With I never had a chance to work with this actress, Mina Savari. Oh my God, she's magical. I mean, I really had to sit down, shut up, and just watch her. She's brilliant.
Wow.
I play her mother-in-law, I guess, whatever. And it is a very deep, dark movie about addiction and mental illness, but a beautiful cast. John Savage, Eric Robert, Mina, who I did most of my scenes with, who I just I haven't spoken to her now in about a month, but she's just so brilliant in it. Very
Wow.
proud of that movie. And I play the grandmother when they take her away for her mental illness and addiction, and I get left with the grandsons who belong to my son, who has now disappeared, whether he's dead in jail. But it's got Rob Saya. He wrote it and directed it. It was his first time directing. And I just saw it recently. Well, I saw most of it. And that looks good. And then I did a little Christmas movie called Saint Nick of Bethlehem. That obviously comes out at Christmas. What else have I done? Yeah, I've been working a little bit here and there. I've been working a lot of bit this last year. During the pandemic, who could work? Who could work? You're going to show that's not work. You
Did you
know?
get COVID?
I did. Did you?
I did. I got it just a few months ago for the
Oh my
first time.
God. But I heard it wasn't so bad now.
Mine was horrible, and I got the Paxlovid rebound, and my
Yeah.
mother was sick with it. It was nasty. And I have long COVID symptoms. The cough.
The damn cough, right?
Yeah, the cough.
Like they know I'm coming because here comes Cathy and her cough. It's like here comes Cathy's climbing, here comes Cathy's cough. I did. I got it. My kids got it.
Mm.
And schools were shut down. Everything's in the living room. Whatever. It was nuts. But I was FaceTiming my daughter one day. I said, I can't drive. I don't feel good. She goes, Mom, you have COVID. I said, no, I don't. She goes, oh, yes, you do. And we were all together, whatever, and they ended up getting it. Then I went to go to work for a couple of days. I ended up with COVID. And I must have missed like a snowstorm in 4 or 5 days. I don't even think I got up to go to the ladies' room. I know I didn't eat, but like days had passed. People were talking about a snowstorm. I was like, what country? What state? Like 3 days ago, Cathy. Nothing, but it took me a while to bounce back from
Yeah.
it. I got it early on. I got it January 3rd. It had hit in that March of 2020, whatever.
Right.
Got it that January. We escaped all evil, and then we started dropping like flies.
Mm.
I had done one thing during COVID, and it was just like a presentation kind of thing. I don't think anything came of it. But no, you couldn't really work and
So
anything that was
what did you do with yourself during COVID?
I got fat. I cooked a lot. I cooked a lot. I read a lot. I did a lot of research, and I started going into like the producing helm.
Ah.
What are things that I would like to make?
Mm.
And well, if you work enough, you can give yourself that opportunity to do that as well, which is kind of like what I did with the restaurants early on and stuff. I got more work working at the pizzeria than I, did by my age, and people come in, oh, you know what you're right for. But and I started writing. And then I realized I'm a good storyteller, but I don't. My daughter's a good writer. My son's a good producer. My other daughter makes a better sauce than me, so I just think I'm just going to stick to what I know. So I did a lot of reading and a lot of kind of meditating and just, getting the last chapter of my life together in a good way. All in a good,
Well, I love every chapter of your life, and I am so happy that I've gotten this chance to be face to virtual face with you.
I have your number. I'm coming out to LA,
Yay!
but like kind of for a bit. So that's my next big plan. I can't announce anything yet, but seems to be going that way. And I will call you and meet you for a slice.
Oh, you promise?
I promise.
I have witnesses.
I do. Listen, because of your witnesses and because of the heart that you have and the talent that you have and the person that you are, is why I'm on the other side of your camera right now.
Oh,
Because I watched your show and you've called me a couple of times and I was like, I have nothing to talk about. I really have nothing to talk about. And
yes, you do.
now an hour's passed and we got too much to talk about, don't we?
Yes, we do.
I'll call you as soon as I get out there.
Thank you, Cathy, so much. I adore you.
Now, let me ask, do I have to get my daughter to come out to turn it
No,
off?
I'm going to end it. You don't have to do anything.
Okay, because I don't want to break anything.
You don't have to do
I adore
anything.
you, Vicki. I'll see you soon.